Between the Lines features AI-generated voices and fictional host characters discussing scripture. Some episodes include reviewed and approved responses from real pastors and scholars, presented using AI voices for consistency. These AI voices do not represent the actual voices of those individuals. Psalm 23 is often read as a quiet, personal psalm, a psalm of peace, of comfort, of rest. But what if that's only the surface? What if Psalm 23 was written to help an entire people remember who God was? Not just to calm an individual heart, but to anchor a nation in the middle of trouble. Today, we're going to read Psalm 23 between the lines. We'll look at its language, its landscape, its voice, and its place in Scripture, and we'll see how it echoes the Exodus story. I'm Jonah.
And I'm Olivia.
And this is Between the Lines. Traditionally, Psalm 23 is attributed to David. We don't know the exact date, but many scholars believe it likely comes from a period when David was running from King Saul, literally living in the wilderness.
So David isn't writing this from a palace, he's writing it from instability.
Right. That matters, because wilderness language isn't theoretical for David, it's lived experience. And that personal experience becomes the doorway into something communal. At a high level, the themes are familiar: shepherd, provision, guidance, peace, rest. But beneath those themes is something else: Exodus memory.
So the psalm is layered?
Very much so. It comforts individuals, yes, but it also calls God's people to remember how he carried an entire nation through the wilderness. Let's start with the language, because this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, what should we notice first?
Words like rest, still waters, leads, and guides. These aren't generic spiritual phrases. For ancient Israelites, these words immediately called specific memories to mind.
Such as?
Take rest. The Hebrew idea behind "he makes me lie down" connects closely to Rephidim, the place where God provided water from the rock. The name Rephidim literally means rest.
So rest wasn't just emotional, it was survival.
Exactly. And still waters aren't just poetic either. Still water is drinkable water. That points straight to Marah, where bitter water was made sweet so the people could live.
That changes how I hear the psalm. It's grounded.
And when David says God leads and guides, Israelites would think of the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. This language is Exodus language.
So the psalm isn't just comforting, it's reminding.
Now, here's the cool part. Once the language points us to the wilderness, the landscape makes even more sense. Psalm 23 presents two stark realities: green pastures and the darkest valley.
They almost feel like opposites.
They are, and that contrast is intentional. David walks through the valley, but God causes him to rest.
So the valley is still real.
Yes, the valley is the physical reality. The rest is the spiritual reality God provides within it.
That mirrors Israel's story.
Exactly. Israel lived in a literal wilderness valley between Mount Sinai and Mount Zion. Danger was real, but God caused them to rest through his presence, his word, and his power.
So the rod and staff weren't abstract comfort, they were protection and authority.
Right. God didn't remove the wilderness, he sustained them in it. But here's where the psalm really opens up, when we pay attention to who is speaking. David uses I, me, and my throughout the psalm, but those pronouns do more than describe one man.
You're saying David is standing in for someone else?
Yes, he places himself in the position of Israel itself.
So the psalm could be read as the nation speaking.
Precisely. And historically, that's likely how it was sung, in synagogues, corporately, Sabbath after Sabbath.
That makes the psalm feel much bigger.
It becomes a communal confession. God carried us through the wilderness. And if that's true, then where Psalm 23 sits in Scripture becomes incredibly important. Psalm 23 sits directly between Psalm 22 and Psalm 24.
That can't be accidental.
It isn't. In Jewish theology, Psalm 22 reflects suffering, most clearly Israel's slavery in Egypt. Psalm 24 celebrates victory and entry into God's dwelling, mirrored in the Promised Land.
So Psalm 23 sits right in the middle, the wilderness.
Exactly. Slavery, wilderness, victory. That's the story.
Christians seem to read these psalms the same way.
We do. Psalm 22 is quoted by Jesus on the cross. Psalm 24 is tied to his ascension. Psalm 23 fits naturally in between, reflecting the burial and the waiting.
So together, they tell the gospel.
They do. For Israel, the speaker was the nation. For Christians, the speaker is the church. Here's the big picture. Psalm 23 is often read as a personal encouragement, and it is that. But more deeply, it's a song of remembrance. A call for God's people to recall His grace in the wilderness and trust that the same grace carries them forward.
And for Christians, it calls us back to the cross and forward in hope.
So here's something to reflect on. How does seeing Psalm 23 through the lens of Exodus and Christ's atonement change the way you hear it?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this journey, subscribe, like, and share so others can explore Scripture a little deeper too.
Thanks for joining us Between the Lines, where we go deeper than the surface and discover what Scripture has been saying all along. Keep asking questions. Don't just read the lines, read between them. God bless, and we'll see you next time.